It never starts with a headline. It starts with a detail, so small, it almost disappears in the moment. A glance that lingers half a second longer than expected. A gesture that feels too perfectly timed. A silence that seems to say more than words ever could. That is how the conversation around Wang and Shen Yue began to shift from admiration to curiosity, and from curiosity to something far more intense. Fans did not wake up one day convinced there was a secret. They built the idea piece by piece. One of the earliest moments people still return to happened during a quiet segment on the inn. It was not meant to be dramatic. The cast was preparing for a simple task, moving around naturally, talking casually. Shen Yue stood near a table arranging items, focused and calm. Dylan walked into the frame carrying supplies. Without looking directly at each other, they adjusted their movements in perfect coordination. She shifted a plate slightly to the side. He placed a tray exactly into that space. No words were exchanged. The precision of that moment stayed with viewers. It felt like two people operating on the same frequency, understanding each other without explanation. At first, it was described as chemistry. Later, it became something else. Another scene added to the growing puzzle. During a group discussion, Shen Yue hesitated before volunteering for a task. Dylan, standing a short distance away, gave a small nod. It was almost invisible, a simple movement of the head. But she responded immediately, continuing her sentence with confidence. The timing felt too aligned to ignore. Fans began calling it a pattern. They started collecting clips. Not just obvious interactions, but quiet ones. The kind that usually fade into the background. A cup moved at the exact moment it was needed. A chair adjusted before anyone asked. A glance that seemed to anticipate the next action. Individually, each moment meant nothing. Together, they formed something compelling. The narrative deepened during a public event months later. Shen Yue was engaged in conversation with another guest, laughing softly. Across the room, Dylan's attention shifted. His expression changed briefly, almost too quickly to catch. The moment lasted less than a second, but it sparked a wave of interpretation. Was it just a glance? Or was it something more instinctive? That clip spread rapidly. Some viewers dismissed it as coincidence. Others saw emotion. The word jealousy appeared in discussions, though never confirmed. What mattered was not the certainty, but the possibility that something unfiltered had been captured. Then came the 2026 Gala. It was supposed to be about fashion and awards, but one detail changed everything. Dylan arrived wearing a tailored suit with a subtle embroidered design near the cuff. Fans quickly noticed how familiar the pattern looked. It resembled a sketch Shen Yue had once shown in an interview, describing her interest in symbolic designs. The connection was not confirmed, but it did not need to be, because the idea alone was enough. When asked about his outfit, Dylan described it as having quiet meaning. Those two words echoed across fan communities. Quiet meaning matched too closely with Shen Yue's own descriptions of her designs as personal and symbolic. The overlap felt intentional. Shen Yue's reaction during an interview that night added another layer. When Dylan's outfit was mentioned, she smiled briefly before shifting the conversation. It was subtle, but in a world where every expression is analyzed, subtle is powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything again. Shen Yue left the gala early. It was not dramatic. No announcement, no visible reason. She simply exited through a side corridor, calm and composed. Minutes later, Dylan did the same. He excused himself, followed a similar route, and disappeared from the event earlier than expected. The timing was impossible to ignore. Fans replayed the sequence endlessly. The shared exit path, the short gap between their departures, the absence of explanation. It all contributed to a growing belief that these were not isolated moments, but connected ones. And then the birthday. At midnight, Dylan posted a quiet message about stars shining brighter. No names, no direct reference. Just a sentence that felt poetic and personal. At the same time, it was Shen Yue's birthday. Later that day, she shared photos of her celebration. Among the candles and flowers was a small star-shaped charm placed on the table. The symbolism felt too aligned. Stars, brightness, quiet meaning. Fans began to see a pattern in symbols. Stars. flowers, subtle designs, quiet phrases. Each element appeared separately, yet somehow connected. Interviews added more to the mystery. Shen Yue spoke about valuing quiet gestures. Dylan mentioned that meaningful messages do not need to be loud. Their words, though spoken in different contexts, seemed to echo each other. The idea of a secret language returned. Not a literal language, but a shared understanding expressed through small actions and symbols. A way of communicating without drawing attention. Skeptics pushed back. They argued that fans were connecting unrelated moments, creating patterns where none existed. They pointed out that celebrities often use poetic language and symbolic imagery independently. According to them, the narrative was built on coincidence amplified by attention. But the opposing view remained strong, because the moments kept coming. A brief exchange of smiles at an event, a synchronized movement during a group activity, a shared sense of timing that appeared again and again. None of it confirmed anything, yet none of it felt entirely random either. What made the theory powerful was its consistency. Not one major event, but many small ones, each adding a layer, each reinforcing the possibility. Even their silence contributed to the story. Neither Dylan Wang nor Shen Yue addressed the speculation directly. No denial, no confirmation. Just a continuation of their professional lives, moving through events and projects as usual. That silence left space. Space for interpretation. Space for imagination. Space for fans to keep decoding. In the end, the question remains. Are they hiding something? There is no clear answer. Only moments. A glance that lingers. A gesture that aligns. A message that feels personal. A timing that raises questions. Perhaps it is all coincidence. Perhaps it is something more. But what keeps the conversation alive is not proof. It is the feeling that behind all the public appearances and controlled environments, there might be a quieter story unfolding. One that is not meant to be explained directly, but understood through details. And sometimes, those details are enough to set the entire internet on fire. As the months passed, the conversation around Dylan Wang and Shen Yue did not fade. Instead, it became more refined, almost like fans were no longer reacting emotionally but observing carefully, searching for patterns with a quieter kind of attention. One of the most talked about follow-up moments happened during a promotional shoot that, on the surface, had nothing to do with either of them directly. The footage showed multiple celebrities preparing for a group campaign. Shen Yue appeared first, adjusting her outfit and speaking with a stylist. A few seconds later, Dylan entered the frame from the opposite side. There was no direct interaction, no greeting captured on camera. Yet something about their positioning stood out. They moved around each other with an unusual awareness. At one point, Shen Yue stepped slightly backward without turning. At the exact same moment, Dylan shifted his position forward, stopping just short of where she had been standing. The movement looked almost instinctive, like two people avoiding collision without needing to look. Fans noticed instantly. The clip was slowed down, replayed, and compared from different angles. Once again, the phrase silent coordination resurfaced. Some described it as coincidence. Others believed it reflected a level of familiarity that comes from understanding someone's movement patterns over time. Then came another moment during a live stage appearance. The event was crowded, filled with lights and noise. Shen Yue stood near the center, listening to the host. Dylan was positioned a few steps behind. As the host asked a question, Shen Yue adjusted her microphone slightly, pausing before speaking. Almost simultaneously, Dylan leaned forward just enough to listen more closely, as if anticipating her response before it came. It was subtle, but consistent. The timing of their actions continued to align in ways that felt difficult to ignore. Fans began shifting their focus away from big moments and toward micro-expressions. The angle of a glance, the direction of attention, the length of a pause. Each small detail became part of a larger effort to understand what, if anything, connected these repeated patterns. One particularly intriguing observation came from an interview where Shen Yue was asked about trust in professional relationships. She answered thoughtfully, saying that true understanding often happens without needing to explain everything out loud. The statement felt general, yet its phrasing echoed earlier discussions about unspoken communication. Shortly after, Dylan appeared in a separate interview and spoke about comfort in collaboration. He mentioned that the best partnerships are the ones where timing feels natural and effortless. Again, the context was broad, but the wording felt familiar. Fans placed the two quotes side by side. The similarity in tone became another point of discussion. Still, there was no direct link, no confirmation, no statement tying any of these moments together. Yet the pattern continued. During a later public event, both were seen in the same venue again. This time, the cameras captured a brief interaction as they crossed paths. Shen Yue looked up first, offering a small, polite smile. Dylan responded with a nod that seemed almost automatic. The exchange lasted less than a second, but the ease of it stood out. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, just recognition. That moment, simple as it was, became one of the most replayed clips among fans who had been following the narrative closely. Not because it proved anything, but because it fit perfectly into the pattern they had been observing for months. A pattern of quiet understanding, of timing, of small, consistent signals. Skeptics continued to argue that the entire theory was built on selective attention. They pointed out that in environments filled with constant movement and interaction, coincidences are inevitable. Given enough footage, anyone could find moments that appear connected. And they were not entirely wrong. But what kept the discussion alive was not just the presence of these moments, but their repetition. The same type of interaction, the same kind of timing, appearing again and again across different settings. In the end, the question has not changed. Are they hiding something? Or are fans simply seeing what they want to see? There is still no clear answer. Only a growing collection of moments that feel too aligned to dismiss, yet too subtle to confirm. And perhaps that is what makes the story so compelling. It exists in the space between certainty and imagination, where every glance, every gesture, and every quiet interaction becomes something worth watching again.